Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to the February live Q&A. Hopefully now you can see me and hear me. Let me know in the chat room if you are seeing this okay. Quick chat. All right. Can you hear me? Can you see me in the chat room? Very good. Let's get started. This is the February live Q&A for patrons. I am Andreas Antonopoulos. Thank you so much for coming. I have so many great questions to cover this time. Welcome all. For those of you who are joining live, thank you so much for taking time on your Saturday morning or Saturday evening or even possibly Saturday midnight where you are in order to participate in this live Q&A. It's a real pleasure to do these, and I'm hoping we'll have fun over the next hour. So you've been asking questions for 2.5 weeks straight and voting on those questions. We'll get right into it. Jeff asks, what projects are most needed in the space right now? That's a great question, and I'm afraid that the answer is rather boring. Now, you might think that what we really need in the space right now is some kind of artificially intelligent neural network-based 3D printing drone-based Mars expedition. The truth is that the most important projects at this stage are really basic infrastructure projects. Projects that are not very exciting. They're not about the latest ICO or prediction markets on isolated tokens that are run by AI. Really, the projects that are most important at the stage in this industry are basic infrastructure. For example, exchanges, wallets, ATMs, and education systems. Let's go through those one by one. Now, you might think we already have enough exchanges, but one of the interesting things about exchanges is that they are very much attached to a local culture, a local language, and a local set of regulations, especially when it comes to exchanging national currency for cryptocurrency and back. We really need on-ramps and off-ramps in order to have enough liquidity and activity. This economy is not yet self-sustaining. It can't operate entirely within the cryptocurrency domain. I think one day it will be, but not yet. So exchanges are necessary, and you can't build an exchange that covers every country. In fact, almost all exchanges are very specific to one country. So if you think about it from that perspective, there's 194 countries. Every country needs 3, maybe 4 exchanges to have a healthy dose of competition. That's about 800 exchanges worldwide for specific countries, not counting specialist exchanges, virtual currency exchanges, and various other permutations on that idea. We're still quite far from that goal. I remember the days when, in fact, there was one exchange, and that was MTGOX, and we all were having difficulties with latency and lag time when trading and security and all kinds of other problems. Fortunately, nowadays we have a wide open space. Next exchanges, I would say wallets. Wallets are the front end of this industry. This is the part that interacts directly with users. Users who are new, their first experience with cryptocurrencies will be through a wallet. This is the first interface they'll know. If that interface is easy to use, if it's easy to use securely, if it's intuitive and easy to understand, then they'll be able to more easily use this new technology. And if the user interface sucks, if it's confusing, if it causes security problems, if it has problems with certain features, if it's not using the latest technology, then users will have difficulty using cryptocurrency. So wallets are really, really important, and wallets are really, really difficult. They require a lot of user design and user experience. They require the latest cutting edge technology. You know, right now, for example, we have all of these new technologies that are enabled for example, in Bitcoin. Or in Ethereum, you have all of these ERC20 tokens, and the state of the art moves very, very fast. Let's look at Bitcoin. SegWit was activated August 1st. At the moment, probably only a handful of wallets on Android, iOS, and desktop support sending and receiving from SegWit capable addresses. And even those are still using addresses wrapped in P2SH, the ones that start with a 3, not using the new SegWit native Fetch32 addresses, which start with BC1. Now, that, again, is a matter of adopting the new technology. Not many wallets adopt technology to handle fees gracefully. Replace by fee, child pays for parent, bumping fees, and things like that, fee estimation technology. All of that really happens at the wallet level. If those things are easy to use in a wallet, then users can take advantage of these new technologies. And if your wallet doesn't support them, you can't really use them. All right, and finally, other forms of infrastructure. ATMs, I think, are quite important. The ability to buy cryptocurrency for cash. Now, if you've ever used a Bitcoin ATM, for example, or another cryptocurrency ATM, you'll know that often they don't work. You go up there and the system is out of service, or it has problems handling fees. Again, these are matters of maturity. Or you might be shocked at how big the premium is for the convenience of being able to pay with cash and instantly transact with cryptocurrencies. So, ATMs are still an evolving space. All right, let's move on to the next question. I'm going to quickly check in with the chat room and see how people are doing. Very good. The next question is, miner spam to raise transaction fees. Is this real? This question comes from Ashley. Andres, can miners spam the network with transaction to raise mining fees, mitigating the cost of such an attack by mining their own transactions? If so, could you elaborate on how such a spam attack would work? Also, how can Bitcoin evolve to address this issue? Actually, this is really not an easy subject. It's quite a controversial subject, in fact, because there's a lot of conspiracy theory flying around, and it's very difficult to draw any firm conclusions. You can't really tell if a transaction is made by a legitimate transaction user who wants to get something paid, or if it was created by a miner or some other party that wants to inflate fees. However, from a theoretical perspective, it is possible to game the system. It is possible to create a lot of transactions with high fees that overpay fees and use that to push up the fee estimation mechanism. Such an attack gets much more expensive when you have more capacity on the network because it takes more to fill the network. So SegWit made that harder. It becomes more expensive when the companies that are operating legitimate transactions, exchanges, merchants, wallets, etc., and users are directly using fee estimation techniques that are good, that are using technologies like replace by fee. So the more sophisticated the fee management of wallets is, the more expensive it gets to cram the blockchain with big transactions. Also, as you indicated in your question, in order for this to be affordable for miners, they have to be able to recover some of those fees by mining their own transactions. And that makes it a lot easier to attack the network. So one of the challenges here is the level of centralization of the mining groups. So when mining is very centralized, it's a lot easier to do this kind of attack. When mining is decentralized or more decentralized, then it's a lot more difficult to achieve this attack because then you may be spending money on raising the mining fees by making transactions, and then at the same time not getting to mine those because somebody else mined the next block. So you lose that money and they gain it. In that case, of course, others can benefit from spam transactions. Other miners can benefit from spam transactions without having to expend the cost of actually spamming the network. It will still raise fees for them, and that makes it an economic tragedy of the commons. In this case, probably a good one. So the final question is, how can Bitcoin evolve to address this issue? The problem here is twofold. One is you will always have limited capacity. There's no possibility of infinite capacity on any system, especially a system that is attempting to be decentralized and secure. So there will always be opportunities to raise the cost of transactions by filling up the available capacity. The problem is really on the back end, which is how centralized or decentralized mining is. Fortunately, we're beginning to see the first effects of the mining chips reaching the limits of Moore's law, and we're beginning to see other chip manufacturers enter the game, as well as we're seeing other countries attracting the Bitcoin miners in their jurisdictions by offering tax breaks or cheap electricity. We're seeing a lot of interest in Canada in mining and other places around the world. So I've long thought that mining is on the cusp of becoming more decentralized because of various economic pressures. So we'll see how that happens. Overall, I think the best defense at the moment is to use sophisticated wallets that allow you to estimate fees correctly and also give you the opportunity to bid for lower fees and replace the fee in your transaction with technologies like replace by fee and child pays for parent. That brings pressure to lower fees on the whole network. And also, one of the simple solutions to that is if the fees are too expensive and your transaction isn't urgent, you wait. And if you're willing to wait, then you're not playing that game. Jason asked, what is the most significant thing you've changed your mind on with respect to cryptocurrencies in the last 5 years? You know, that's a very interesting question, Jason. And I was kind of digging in my memory and trying to remember various things that I might have changed my mind on. I think, first of all, I try not to take firm positions with certainty on issues regarding cryptocurrency or make predictions about the future with absolute certainty. I think absolute certainty is the behavior of a fool, really, especially in a technology like this that is moving so fast and where changes are happening in highly unanticipated ways. I think it takes a lot of, how do I put this? You have to be quite foolish to believe that, or quite arrogant to believe that you can make firm predictions or have opinions with certainty in an area that is so vast and complex. So I try to be flexible. I try to realize that there's more that I don't know about this space than I do know. And I'm always willing to change my mind. And I've often been wrong about things. I thought that fees were going to be low or near free forever. I didn't anticipate that we'd see as much centralization in the chip manufacturing side of mining. I was a bit surprised by that. I also thought that that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies could be attacked more readily, which was certainly a fear back when Mt. Gox collapsed. It was the first time that I felt, oh, this could be it. This could be the end of Bitcoin. We'll have to start over. We'll have to reboot it and start again. This could really kill Bitcoin. I mean, keep in mind, at the time, it was really the only exchange that represented 80% of the volume, and it went down in such a spectacular way. So that time I was scared. Ironically, I'm not so easily scared anymore. I think I had underestimated how resilient this technology is and how strong it is and how hard it is to take it down. I also underestimated how fragmented the community could get, how much trolling and bitterness and personal vendettas and things like that and egos could become in this space. The debate really surprised me with the amount of bitterness and vitriol and passion behind it. And so, now I think I'm a bit wiser. Anytime you have large amounts of money, I think the inevitable trajectory of any cryptocurrency community is eventually you will arrive at a point of controversy that is big enough, with stakes that are high enough, that emotions will get very, very heated. And some people do not act in good faith. Some people will act in self-interest. I also believe that that's one of the ways that outsiders have tried to attack this system, by attacking the community and creating drama on purpose. It's a classic technique used against grassroots movements. All right. The next question comes from Harry the Horse. Are decentralized, that's a funny name, by the way. Are decentralized online exchanges possible with a fiat gateway? Harry asks. Let me see if there's a bit more to that question. I just have to open it up. With more adoption, many startup projects have been created to address the issue of centralized exchanges by introducing various decentralized exchanges from crypto to crypto pairings, where the exchange trader or customer owns the keys to the exchange wallet. Is it going to be possible to have a decentralized online exchange with a fiat gateway, meaning where you can exchange cryptocurrency for national currency, or is this something that could never happen? Also, what are your thoughts about the future of decentralized online exchanges over the next 1-2 years? I think decentralized exchanges are going to become a very big part of this industry in 2 or 3 ways that might be surprising. So let me start with the last question first. The future of decentralized online exchanges, I think, is huge, primarily because we're beginning to see the ability to launch a couple of technologies that are really going to revolutionize things. One of those is atomic swaps. We already have demonstrated applications that can do atomic swaps between different blockchains. An atomic swap is where 2 parties each pledge on one side of a cryptocurrency in a way that they don't need the third party or escrow system. They escrow each other. And then the code that is needed to release one side guarantees that the other side can release their funds. And if neither side releases the funds, then they both can get a refund after a time. It's a basic smart contract using multi-sig and time locks. It's very, very similar to the type of smart contract you see in payment channels. And atomic swaps make it possible for 2 individuals independently to swap 2 cryptocurrencies and swap them atomically, meaning that it's all or nothing. Either both transactions go through or neither transaction goes through, and neither party can walk away and steal the currency. So that's they don't have to trust each other. They don't have to trust in any third party. So that's a big development. The other big development is the fact that Lightning Network can be used to do atomic swaps between currencies. Effectively, you can create a channel where you send a payment in, say, Bitcoin, and the other party receives it in Litecoin. So you can use Lightning Network as an overlay network to exchange crypto to crypto. I think these 2 developments are going to be very exciting. So now back to your first question, which is, can you have a decentralized exchange with a fiat gateway? Yes, you can. In fact, it already exists. One example is Bisq, which is spelled BISQ. And Bisq is a decentralized exchange that runs a peer-to-peer protocol. In fact, it runs over Tor, and it allows parties to escrow and then exchange cryptos for cryptos, as well as cryptos for national currencies. Here's the problem, though. There is a certain degree of risk whenever you exchange cryptocurrency for a national currency. And the reason for that is that the cryptocurrency side is non-reversible. Even if you escrow it for a while, at some point when you make that payment, once you've made that payment, it cannot be reversed. On the other hand, there is no way to fully guarantee and clear with absolute finality the exchange of fiat unless you do it with cash. So if you did a fiat to cryptocurrency exchange where someone mailed cash through the postal service, which is probably illegal in many countries, and I wouldn't recommend it, you could have finality on the fiat side, but then that would expose the fiat holding person to extreme risk, because why pay the cryptocurrency? You'd need an escrow on both ends. The biggest problem is that if you, for example, set it up so that someone makes a cash deposit into your bank account, great, then you send them the crypto, then they reverse the cash deposit. You'd be surprised at how easy it is to walk into a bank and say, that was a fraud, I got defrauded, here's my deposit slip, I deposited cash into this bank account, and can you please reverse it? And they will reverse it. They'll give you back cash or move it back into another account. So if you're the person who just sent crypto, you're out of luck. Like, good luck arguing with your bank. In fact, the moment you walk in and say, hey, I gave this person cryptocurrency in return for that cash, they're probably going to say, oh, well, cryptocurrency, I heard that's illegal, so we're not going to help you. It's also possible to reverse PayPal transfers, possible to reverse wire transfers, possible to reverse credit card transactions. And in fact, there is no limit as to how far back in time you can go. Theoretically, a bank can simply pull the money out of your account. If you've already spent it from the account, they will simply deduct the money. You'll have a negative balance, and the next time you put money in there, they're going to take from that. So even if that money isn't in there, they'll just take from other money like your wages, or they'll simply put you in credit and then send you letters and eventually send debt collectors after you to collect. There is no time at which you can say with absolute finality that a bank deposit, bank transfer, wire transfer, credit card transfer, or PayPal transfer is final. No 6 confirmations. Infinity confirmations are not enough for fiat. It is a soft promise, and it can never be a hard promise. And that's why fiat gateways are always risky. What do people who are using Bisq do? They take a risk. And as long as it's a small amount, that might be an acceptable risk, but that doesn't scale. The next question comes from Nacho. And Nacho asks, if you were a state actor that was comfortable, say, carrying $200 trillion in debt and unfunded liabilities, how would you attack Bitcoin given your ability to print money and run deficits? Could you spin up 100,000 nodes? Could you take over consensus in some other way? What does the network response to your most likely attack look like? So thank you, Nacho, for that question. I think that because we're engaged in technology, we assume that the types of attacks that this system will face are going to be technological attacks. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If I'm a state actor and I want to attack a cryptocurrency, I would use technology as the absolute last form of attack. Why would I go and play in the turf of the other party? Like, technology is what we do, and we're damn good at it, and most governments are not that good at technology. It's like trying to attack a young person on social media. They're much better at social media than you are. And you don't attack a technology platform using technology. That's not very good. You're going to lose that. It's asymmetric warfare where the technologies have significant advantage. No. I would attack it by creating legal uncertainty. How about making it so that you have to file capital gains for every single dollar you spend, even if it's for a pack of gum or a cup of coffee, to make it impossible to engage in regular commerce? Instead of treating it like a foreign currency or any type of currency, treating it like a commodity. Oh, wait, they already did that, which is why it cost me more in my accounting fees and my capital gains in order to do my tax reporting. How about making it legally vague as to whether you're allowed to hold it or not to hold it? How about creating various ways of scaring the middle class and the mainstream? How about using propaganda and media and dropping announcements by officials about how this technology can't be trusted, you're likely to lose your money, and we're all drug dealers and criminals anyway? Those are much more effective. And finally, how about using paid sock puppets to infiltrate every public forum and start screaming and creating dissent and noise and drama and accusing everybody of being a paid shill of X and a paid shill of Y and lying and being fraudsters and scammers and creating all of this loud, noisy drama? I mean, who wants to engage in cryptocurrency when all of the people in the space seem so nasty and dramatic? Well, most of those people are not in the space. They're in fact trolls who are doing this for fun, or paid infiltrators who are doing this as a job. Just recently, we found out, for example, that I believe it was in Poland, the central bank paid a YouTube artist $30,000 to create this laughably bad public service announcement type video where they make crypto look bad by having this guy take his girlfriend to a pizzeria, and then he tries to pay with crypto and he can't, so she walks out. And it was just ridiculous. Anyway, this kind of propaganda is definitely happening. State actors, if they want to attack a grassroots movement, use infiltration, surveillance, intimidation, coercion, blackmail, rumors, and drama. They've done that with every grassroots movement in history. And it is naive to think that they're not doing it this time. Why not? Of course they are. So state actors do not use overt, direct, and technological attacks, especially not against technologists. They're going to use covert, underhanded, and mostly psychological and reputation and sentiment attacks to attack this technology. And they already are doing so. Matthew asks, oh, actually, before I go into the next question, let me just quickly jump into the chat room and see what we're doing here. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Hope you're having fun. Let's see. We seem to be having some problems with audio for some people, not other people. Not really how I can help fix that. I'm already at maximum volume. I'll try and speak louder. Let's see if that helps. And by the way, we are going to be publishing this with a backup soundtrack and video that I'm taking, so that if the live video isn't very good quality, you can always watch this again. We're going to have high quality video reposted afterwards. Great, everybody's ready. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next one. Matthew asks about securing crypto. One second, let me just pull up the next two questions since my connection is rather slow here. By the way, how does everybody like the new Q&A system? I stopped using Slido, and I started using a plugin on my own website to collect questions and answers. I think this is a better system. We can open the questions for a lot longer than just a week. It's got a nice voting system, and most importantly, it's got comments and discussions so that people are picking up the conversation. All right, so Matthew asks, if you were advising a mildly techie person, for example, someone who has no understanding of Linux programming, the command line, but not a complete novice either, how to securely store their portfolio of BTC, ETH, BCH, ADA, XLM, XRP, and other three-letter acronyms, what would you say? A, all in a hardware wallet, multiple hardware wallets. B, 10% on a hardware wallet, 90% in cold storage. C, 100% on an exchange and take up praying or stoicism. D, a different setup. Great question, Matthew. The answer I would give you is that if I was advising a non-technical person, a not deeply technical person, I would certainly not suggest using an exchange unless you are so non-technical that you can't handle a USB device and running an application. There are some people for whom the level of technical expertise they have is so low that perhaps using the vault feature on an exchange with some two-factor, if somebody else helps them set up, is more secure. But for the vast majority of people, I would say a hardware wallet is the best balance of ease of use, high level of security, difficult to mess it up. I would recommend holding 90% perhaps on a hardware wallet and a smaller percentage on a hot wallet that you use for daily kind of activity, so that you don't have to reach for your hardware wallet every time you need to make a transaction. Perhaps if you're running a business, you might have a three-tier solution. I talked about that recently in a video where you have a hot wallet, perhaps on a smartphone, which is for immediately accessible cash. And I wouldn't hold more than a couple $100 on that. Then maybe a hardware wallet that you keep online, that you keep handy and you use every day or once a week, for example, to do purchases for your business and to run your business. And then the rest in cold storage, either on a hardware wallet or on a seed that was created on a hardware wallet, but then wiped and only exists as a paper backup in multiple locations. So I would suggest the easiest thing for someone who's not technical is a hardware wallet. It removes a lot of the possibilities for failure. You need to carefully follow the instructions. Most importantly, don't get cute. If you start doing well, I got 24 words, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them up and put 8 words here and 8 words there and 8 words somewhere else, and that's going to be then I'm going to take a photo of that and I'm going to encrypt it with TrueCrypt, and then I'm going to put the TrueCrypt on a Dropbox with a backup on my PGP. You're going to lose your money. Don't get cute. Follow the basic instructions. Follow the scheme that is suggested by the hardware wallet manufacturer, because that represents the best balance between security and resilience or recoverability. And if you try to tip it, you're probably going to tip it too far in one or the other direction and break the security model. So it's best to just do the very basics with a hardware wallet. For most people, that is a very, very, very secure solution. Also, don't tell people that you have cryptocurrencies. Operational security is just as important as information security. Evander asks, if you were to make one change to Bitcoin, what would it be and why? Well, if I were to make one change to Bitcoin, I would get downvoted by consensus because no one gets to make changes to Bitcoin. But I think that what I'd like to see is more implementation of privacy features, but I think these changes are already happening. So I don't really think there's anything that I would change in Bitcoin from the original design, I think it would be hubris to think I can do it better. Um, every month, every week almost, somebody comes along with, hey, I'm new to Bitcoin. I just found out about it, and I already have ideas on how to make it better. So I created Xcoin, and Xcoin is the next Bitcoin. You know what? There's been a next Bitcoin every year since the beginning of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's still the next Bitcoin. And there's a reason for that. The particular set of building blocks and careful design choices that were in Bitcoin happen to be just right for the level of adoption and development and security that we have with Bitcoin. And trying to improve on that is a fool's game, I think. There are many experts who are suggesting some, I think, interesting and relevant improvements, primarily in the area of privacy, which is an area that definitely can be improved. But when people tell you that Bitcoin's broken, or it's got fatal problems or design issues, or it's soon going to be superseded by this next technology, I would be very skeptical when I hear those kinds of things. Yes, other coins may exceed Bitcoin in market cap. Having more money to throw at something doesn't make it better. The banks can make a coin that has more market cap than Bitcoin. Of course they can. Money is the one thing they have. But can you make something that's more secure? Can you make something that's more decentralized? Can you make something that's more autonomous? Can you make something that is more censorship resistant, better for the things that Bitcoin is good at? And I don't think we can. And if we can do those things mostly with Bitcoin, because it's already got a very good basis for doing those things. Next question is really interesting. It comes from Pierre. Money supply and deflation. Pierre asks, restricted money supply in Bitcoin is virtuous to create trust in the system and avoid inflation. Most economists, however, advocate for a flexible money supply so that it matches economic conditions and need for credit. If the current fiat system inflates endless bubbles through cheap credit, doesn't Bitcoin have the exact opposite problem? Two problems come to mind. One, future prices are unpredictable and do not match productivity either. And two, too much deflation might discourage investment. In summary, if Bitcoin is its own central bank, how do you know that its monetary policy, deeply embedded in the system, was a good one in the first place? Any advice on good readings about this issue? You know, I think this is part of a broader issue, and that broader issue is this assumption that there will be one money, and that one money is the mandatory money that everyone has to use. You see, central bankers have to get it right because they're forcing everyone to use their system, and if they get it wrong, they force everyone to get it wrong with them. Bitcoin may not be the right monetary policy, but it's an opt-in voluntary system. If you don't like its monetary policy, don't use it. And in fact, in a world where that choice exists, in fact, in a world where all of the choices exist, where you could pick monetary policy by picking the currency you want to use on a day-to-day basis, where you can't be locked into a system, where you can't be taken hostage, where you always have an exit, is a world in which there is no wrong monetary system because there is no permanent monetary system. There is no unchangeable monetary system. Bitcoin's monetary system is unchangeable within Bitcoin, but you don't have to stay with it. You can leave if you don't think it's right. The problem with the monetary policy of nations is that not only do they change at the whim of bureaucrats, but you can't leave. And so it's easy to look at that and say, well, we wouldn't want Bitcoin to replace all central banks with a deflationary monetary system that is imposed on everyone. Well, guess what? I don't want Bitcoin to replace all central banks with a monetary system that is imposed on anyone. That's not what it's about. about choice. And once you have choice, then your choice of monetary system is the right one for you because you chose it. And if nobody else chooses it, that's their problem. Let's check in. Here we go. Very good. Chat room's still going. Everybody's happy. Next one up is Bitcoin roadmap asked by trolls. And that's how I pronounce the name that I see here. It's Troels, pronounced trolls. I find it very hard to get an overview of the Bitcoin roadmap. As Bitcoin is decentralized, I guess it's harder to make a roadmap, but where and how do the core dev teams suggest new features and how to see if they will go into an update or a soft fork or a hard fork? There's two places where you can keep up to date. At least from my perspective, those are the two places where I keep up to date. One is the Bitcoin developers mailing list. And that mailing list is hosted on the Linux Foundation, and it's open to anyone. You can subscribe and you can watch the conversations. There's some conversation on there that is relevant where you see some of the developers who are developing new features and capabilities. They make proposals, they have discussions, and those discussions happen by email. There's also quite a bit of noise as various people come in and let's say introduce various crazy ideas that don't really have much traction. The other place to follow is the GitHub repository. So the GitHub repository for Bitcoin Core, if you follow the pull requests, the issues, and the conversations there, then you can see the immediate short-term roadmap of what is happening in terms of updates to the software. And there is a lot of activity going on. So that's the advice I would give. There is a software roadmap. It's developed by consensus. There's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions and a lot of discussion going on. And you can see how gradually something that starts off with an idea or a suggestion. For example, at the moment, one of the interesting ideas being discussed is a system called Taproot and Graftroot, which are systems for combining masked Merkleized abstract syntax trees with kind of a default script that looks like a public key payment in such a way that you can't differentiate between transactions that are complex scripts and transactions that are simple public key payments. It's a new privacy enhancement. Very, very interesting. A lot of conversation happening on the Bitcoin developers mailing list, but that kind of thing is very, very far from code and a pull request. It might be a year before we actually see code around that. Who knows? All right. Felipe asks, what do you consider to be the key factors that will drive adoption of the Lightning Network? Taking into consideration the relatively low adoption of SegWit, and what should Bitcoin advocates around the world focus on to promote the adoption of Lightning in their local communities? Quite honestly, Felipe, I think Lightning adoption will be driven by the fact that Lightning solves specific problems if it solves specific problems. It might be driven by fees, so the ability to do transactions more cheaply. It might be driven by new applications that you simply can't do without Lightning, such as micropayments and streaming money. It might be driven by second layer or third layer applications that are built on top of Lightning. New types of applications that were not possible until then. It might be driven by atomic swaps and decentralized exchange capabilities, especially in places where other types of exchanges are prohibited. And it might not be driven by any of those things, and that's okay too. I think it's important to realize that adopting Lightning is entirely voluntary. If you need it, adopt it. If you don't need it, don't adopt it. And the same thing goes for SegWit. It's a voluntary feature. If you want to use SegWit because you think it helps you, use it. If you don't have to. It's a completely voluntary feature. And in fact, you actually have to do some things in order to adopt SegWit, and you have to do some things in order to adopt Lightning. It's an affirmative choice. It doesn't just happen to you. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can always continue to use what you want. Um, I think we are seeing adoption of SegWit. I don't think it's low adoption or slow adoption. In fact, we're now seeing it accelerate. And what happened to precipitate that was mostly pressure on fees and capacity. But I don't think Bitcoin advocates should focus on promoting the adoption of Lightning in their local communities. I don't think they should focus on promoting the adoption of anything in their local communities unless they see a specific problem that is solved specifically by a technology, in which case, don't promote adoption, promote solution, and promote solution in relation to a specific problem. We don't need marketing that is based on my team is better than your team. If it doesn't solve a real problem, who cares if anybody adopts it? Let's see, we've got another couple of questions about decentralized exchanges. I think I've already answered decentralized exchanges, so I'm going to skip that last one. All right. The next question is rather interesting. I think this is probably going to make a great Q&A video. What is child pays per parent? How does it work, and which wallets have this feature? Well, first of all, Gustavo asked this question. First of all, Gustavo, child pays per parent isn't really a feature. It's a recognition of the economic incentives that exist for miners in selecting transactions, meaning that if you have a transaction that is unconfirmed, and that transaction has a child transaction, a dependent transaction that is also unconfirmed, when you're choosing which transactions to include in the block as a miner, you want to look not at the amount of fee per byte paid individually by each transaction, but you want to look at the fees per byte paid jointly by both of those transactions. If the child has a very generous fee, but the parent has a very low fee, the child will never get confirmed because it has an unconfirmed parent, so that won't help. But if you consider the fee jointly between the two, you might be able to collect the very generous fee of the child by allowing it effectively to subsidize or taking it into consideration as a whole the low fee of the parent. So let's say the parent is paying 1 Satoshi per byte and the child is paying 100 Satoshis per byte. If you consider them independently, that means don't confirm the parent, yes, confirm the child, but you can't do that because the child doesn't exist without the parent being confirmed. But if you take them together, well, they're paying 50 Satoshis per byte jointly, and that's a great fee, so you confirm both. That strategy is already used by miners. What it means to have that feature in a wallet is to be aware that that strategy is being used by miners and use it to your advantage. And you can use it to your advantage in two ways. One is if you are receiving a transaction and it's not confirming, you can take one of the outputs that you own that is sent to you, unconfirmed output, and you can construct a child transaction that uses that as an input and give it a very big fee. As a result, you're going to make the situation such that the miners will want to select both of those transactions to include them in the next block. And so the transaction that you were expecting, that you were receiving, that was unconfirmed, becomes confirmed because you spent it while it was unconfirmed with a higher fee. So you create the child that pays for a parent that has been sent to you that hasn't confirmed yet. And by doing that, essentially what you've done is you've bumped the fee for the parent and made it possible for it to confirm. So you can push through a transaction that is stuck. I've done that many times. So I have an incoming payment, it has a low fee on it. I create a child transaction on purpose and bump the fee. I use Electrum to do this, but some other wallets also have this feature. I can't give you a list right now, but you can maybe do some Google research on that. But there's another way to use this, which is it's not just the recipient that can use child pays for parent, the sender can too, because almost always when you send out a transaction, there is a change payment coming back to you. And you can string a child onto the change output of your own parent and use it to bump the fee. So if you haven't used replace by fee, so you can't affect the fee of the parent, you can use child pays for parent instead to, let's say, accelerate one of your own outgoing transactions by attaching a greater fee to the change output in a child that you control. Even if the person receiving that isn't doing a child pays for parent, perhaps they don't know how to, you can accelerate the parent by constructing a child with a change transaction. It's an interesting feature. It comes out of basic economic incentive mechanisms that apply to miners, and you can use it in certain wallets in order to accelerate transactions. Banksters versus Bitcoin. Ivan asks, as big banks, governments, ruling organizations are threatened or should be threatened by Bitcoin, eventually they will lose money and power. How do you see this big upcoming battle playing out? It's very difficult to predict how this battle will play out. I'm actually gratified by the fact that so far, the main reaction has been to underestimate the threat. And there's one advantage here, which is that incumbents, big incumbent organizations, historically massively underestimate the threat of disruptive technologies until it's too late to do anything about it. Whether it is Kodak underestimating digital cameras and then getting steamrolled by Nokia, which wasn't even a camera manufacturer, whether it's car companies underestimating Tesla, whether it's Walmart underestimating Amazon and online shopping, whether it's Blockbuster underestimating Netflix. Until very, very late into the competition, you were still hearing many of the executives of these companies saying, we have 100 years of tradition behind us, loyal customers, the tangible quality of analog film, the eternal joy of analog photography. These new technologies will not possibly overtake us. Nobody will want to shop online. Nobody can really stream videos online. People like rewinding VHS cassettes. Okay, they never said that one, but still, hubris, dismissive attitudes, complacency are characteristics of large incumbent organizations. So one of the things that makes me optimistic is that I think they will continue to underestimate Bitcoin, and I hope they do for a very long time, until it's way, way too late to do anything. And even if they did figure it out and wanted to try to do something, you don't really have too many options. They can't compete against it because the very architecture of these organizations is centralized, and they can't compete against decentralized threats. They can't regulate it out of existence because regulation is the first thing that this technology disrupts. They can't prevent people from using it because in the places where it's needed most, people are so desperate to use technologies to gain their financial freedom that they will break any law put in their place and risk imprisonment or worse, as we've seen in places like Venezuela. They can't intimidate people from stopping to use it. And so in the end, there's really not much they can do. But still, I'd rather they didn't figure that out until a lot later. The next question is about airdrops by Anthropomorphosis, please. Is there any reason to take Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Super, Bitcoin, etc. seriously? I don't know. I don't know. I will not say that you shouldn't take these things seriously because, again, I don't like to make predictions with certainty. I do think that airdrops are not free money. Airdrops come with a rather significant price attached to them, and that price is the loss of privacy. In order to take advantage of an airdrop, you have to use keys that already have balance before the fork. And those keys, perhaps if you've been doing your operational security properly, um, those keys you control several different addresses. You don't use the same address twice. You don't have address reuse. You keep the UTXO separate. You're careful about how you manage your wallet. And you've been able to maintain some degree of privacy. And what happens if you try to cash out on one of these forks? Well, most people are going to do this in a very naive way, which is aggregating all of the UTXO in a single transaction after splitting and moving it out. Well, you've just associated all of those addresses, and of course, not just for the new fork, but for the original fork you kept it on. So you've associated all of the addresses in Bitcoin that you had your Bitcoin on because of the transaction you did in Bitcoin Cash. And trust me, intelligence agencies, analytics firms, and anybody else who has the desire to do data analytics is watching, and they're going to know exactly what you have, where you have it, and which addresses belong to you. And if any one of those addresses was ever associated with an exchange or merchant that does KYC or that has a shipping address for you or a name attached to one of those addresses, now all of those addresses have your identity attached to them. That's a heavy price to pay to collect an airdrop. I haven't collected any airdrops, let me put it that way, and I probably won't. We'll see how it goes. All right. Let's pick one or two more questions. Okay, I think this one's interesting to answer, and it'll be my last question for today. Can new users use Lightning Network? Andre asks, if somebody doesn't have enough funds, or if they are completely new and have no BTC, zero Bitcoin, is it true that they cannot receive Bitcoin through Lightning Network because they cannot open a channel? If so, are there any theoretical solutions? I've heard this a few times before. It is not true. It is categorically not true. Someone else can open a channel to you in which you contribute zero. If you're running a node, you don't have to fund that node, and you can give somebody else the public key of your node, and they can open a channel to you to send you a payment in which you have zero balance in that channel. They'll probably open a channel that only has the balance of the amount they want to send you. And the reason for that is because if you have zero on your side of the channel, then there's nothing stopping you from broadcasting a prior state in which you had more. So they're not at risk any more than they would already give you anyway. But you can absolutely have someone open a channel to you with zero commitment on your end and receive your first Bitcoin through a Lightning Network channel. In fact, I would expect that in many places, when you use an exchange, you will be receiving your first Bitcoin through a Lightning payment channel. And of course, once you do receive it, you don't need to close that channel and cash out. What you can do is you can open other channels and then route payments through Lightning Network to purchase things or use the Bitcoin that you have without closing the channel. So absolutely and categorically untrue that if you're new and have no funds, you can't use Lightning Network. All right, with that, I think we have wrapped up the February live Q&A for patrons. Thank you so much for participating. More importantly, thank you so much for your support. Providing monthly support through Patreon has completely changed the way that I can do my job. It's allowed me to focus on education. It's allowed me to start all of these new initiatives, to do translations of my videos, etc., and always know that I have a steady income to run my business in order to be able to continue to pursue my mission, and not have to chase up commercial conferences, go speak to bankers, and all of that stuff that I kind of had to do before Patreon happened. So again, thank you so much for your support. You make it possible for me to do this work that I really, really care about. And I really appreciate all of the help and support. Now, a few quick announcements since you're here. We have a new patron resources post that I managed to make sticky. If you look at the homepage on Patreon, you'll see at the top, there's a link that says, click here for Patreon only resources. Among other things, what you will find there is my 2018 strategic goals, which is what I plan to do this year, all of my most important things prioritized. That's my focus. That's what I'm basing all of my actions on, is that strategic plan. You'll also see information about how to subscribe to the YouTube channel, about the Telegram chat groups that we have for everybody to meet up and have conversations, and lots of other little resources. So if you haven't seen that already, check it out. It's on the top of the Patreon page. All right, thank you all for everything. I will see you in 1 month when we'll do our March live Q&A for patrons, and take care. Thanks for the great questions.